Hello, I'm Richard Rogers, and I want to welcome you to Unity of Prescott. You know, we are committed to supporting you spiritually in whatever you're going through right now. We've invested lots of money to provide high quality equipment so that each week you get a spiritual message that makes a difference in your life. And I want to thank each and every one of you that is so generously supporting this ministry through your regular giving. Your giving absolutely makes a spiritual difference in the life of our ministry. So thank you, thank you, thank you very much for all of your support. All right, today we're going to talk about this idea of being grateful for our enemies. See, one of the things that I want you to see is that sometimes living the spiritual life is hard. It just is hard. And when we can kind of open up a space to just accept that, everything gets a little easier. So let's begin with the question. What do you see is the benefit of you living a spiritual life? When you look at your life, you know, if you've been practicing your spiritual principles and you've been doing your prayers and meditation and you're working on yourself and you're believing in more and you're not living in as much fear. What do you see as the benefit of really living the spiritual life? And I've come up with not an extensive list, but a list, right? So I think the number one benefit of living the spiritual life is that you feel more connected to God. I think that as you live the spiritual life, there's a higher sense of living a peaceful existence. You just feel at peace with yourself. You feel at peace with others. You feel at peace in your own body. You just feel at peace. I also believe that as you live the spiritual life, that you live with more faith and confidence. Like in your daily life, you're not as anxious or worried or fearful. You just live with more confidence. You live with more faith. You believe that things are going to work out. You tend to have more trust in God. I also think that as you live the spiritual life, that you see greater possibilities, that you see a bigger possibility for your life, for your family, for your world, that life gets bigger. The old limitations, the old smallness of your life just begins to look really small, and you begin to see possibilities that you never saw before. I think as you live the spiritual life, you get happier, you get kinder. And I think that as you live the spiritual life, life gets easier. It's not as many upsets. There's not as many dramas. There's not as many stories. I think it just gets easier. And I believe that it improves your relationships with friends and family, and your relationships get deeper, more meaningful, more loving, right? And the other thing is, I think that you get healthier. I think that there's an aliveness, there's a spirit, there's an energy that moves through you as you live the spiritual life. Now, as we talk about that, I want you to really also look at what are the expectations. What are the expectations for you living the spiritual life? You know, I knew in high school, at some point in high school, that I was really called to be a minister. And I was called to live the spiritual life and to be a spiritual teacher. And I knew that's what I was called to do. I knew it's what I wanted to do. But when I was in high school, I thought I was going to do it at about the age I am now. Right? I thought I was going to put this off as long as I could, kind of retire into ministry, and then I would kind of do it after I made a ton of money and had all the fun that I wanted to have and live the fun life, and then I was going to kind of retire into ministry. And as I began to live the spiritual life, I realized that I could actually live it at any age, that there was a level of freedom and possibilities, right? But the basis of this is that one of the things that I want you to see, one of the expectations, is that we're willing to raise all of our relationships to a higher level. Like when we really put God first in our life, I believe that there's an expectation that we can't continue to be the same old jerk that we've always been. Right? That there's this expectation that if we're really going to live the spiritual life, that we're going to move our relationships to a higher point of view, to a higher field. You know, Jesus said that the most important thing was to love God and to love your neighbor as yourself. But then in Matthew, he gave us this extra challenge. And I want to read that. Matthew 5, 43 through 48. You've heard it said that you should love your neighbors and hate your enemies. But I tell you, you should love your enemies and even pray for those who would persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven, because he causes the sun to shine on the evil and on the good. He sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward do you get? Don't even the tax collectors do that? And if you greet only your own people, what more are you doing than others? Don't even the pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. So here's the challenge, right? So we know we're supposed to love God. We know we're supposed to love our neighbors, our friends, and family. But the challenge that Jesus gives us is that we're supposed to love our enemies. We're supposed to love those people that would do us harm, that would persecute us. And this is the hardest one because that one just seems wrong, right? Reading from our gratitude booklet. And today is Gratitude for Enemies. Enemies are so stimulating. The quote is from Katharine Hepburn. Have you ever had an enemy and turned them into a friend? It's not easy, but it can happen. Our enemies often call us to go deeper into our own spiritual practice than we want to go. Jesus gave us the greatest challenge of not only loving our enemies, but praying for those who would stand against us. One of the gifts that our enemies bring is a new point of view. We get so used to seeing our world the way we see it. Our enemies often see the world very differently than we do. Today, I practice loving and forgiving my enemies. I love and forgive, and I open the inner door that allows for a deeper healing. Love and forgive have a secret power that allows me to see life in a new way. So here we go. So here's our work this week. I want you to really get out your spiritual muscles. And this is like we're going to drop and do 10 push-ups, right? Because this is where we really get our spiritual workout. I want you to make a list of 2 to 3 to 4 people that in your mind you've held them as enemies, right? And it could be a neighbor, it could be an ex, it could be an old employer, it could be somebody from high school that you still send barbs to every time you think of it. I want you to think of all the people in your life, and it may be a longer list than 3 or 4, but I want you to make a list of all the people in your life that you have held as your enemy. And I want you to really look at the energy that you're putting out into the universe, especially to those people. Because what we know happens, as you give, so shall you receive. So whatever energy you're putting out into anyone at some level has to come back to you, right? So one of the things that Jesus is asking us to do is to take all of our relationships, especially those with people that are hard for us to love, and to take them up, to raise those relationships to higher levels. And so what is the example he gave us? The first thing he said in that scripture was that we are called to greet people. How did he say it? If you greet only your own people. What I want you to see is how often we tend to want to greet and acknowledge people that are like us, that look like us, that act like us, that live like us, that share our values, that sometimes we don't always want to greet people who don't kind of match how we see ourselves. We don't always want to greet somebody if we bump into somebody in the store or in the gas station and they look like, if they look different than us, if they're of different race or a different ethnic group, or if they look differently than we do, we tend to just want to keep our head down, go in, get what we want, and get out. And I want you to really open a space for a much bigger greeting. I want you to really begin to look at greeting people, not only that look like you, but everyone who doesn't. people of different races, people of different backgrounds. I want you to open your heart and start greeting people and see if you can make eye contact with an open heart. Well, Richard, I don't want to do that, right? I'm afraid that if I greet a homeless person, they're going to ask for something, right? Or if I greet this person, I don't want them to. I get scared. When I get scared, I close down my heart and I don't really want to open it up. But today, what I'm going to challenge you to do is really to open your heart and begin to greet people in a much greater way, to raise up all of your relationships so that you can have more of a connection to the people around you. I have a dear friend. And in the backseat of her car, on the floor of the backseat of her car is a box, and she calls them her homeless gift bags. And in her homeless gift bags, she has socks, and she has Band-Aids, and suntan lotion, and Vaseline, and Band-Aids, and a packet of tuna that people can rip open. And she has these nice little things. Because what she found that she was doing, when she'd get to an intersection and there would be a homeless person there, she'd look away. She didn't want to greet them. She didn't want to acknowledge them. She didn't want to see them. She didn't want to see the pain because it hurt her heart. And so now when she gets to an intersection, she actually makes eye contact. And she holds up one of these homeless, what she calls her homeless gift bags, and she offers them these gift bags. And some people don't want it. They just want cash. But some people do. They take it. Like they appreciate it. They're grateful for it. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody is grateful for it. Doesn't mean that everybody wants it. But what in her life, it allowed her to start greeting people that were scary to her, that were different from her. And it allowed her to have a connection, a human connection to another human being, and to watch that process unfold. So I want you to really look at how you're greeting people, too. Second way I think we can really move our relationships and really raise them higher is to accept people as they are, right? That sometimes we get so wound up when we really can't accept them. And we have to accept people not for who we thought they were, not for who we wanted them to be, and we have to accept them even when they're telling us that they're one way, and it turns out the way they behave is really completely different from that. That part of acceptance is that we stand more open, more receptive to accept people as they are. Because the moment we move into acceptance, we're actually at a place of freedom. Like, sometimes we argue with reality. Like, if somebody was going to come up right now and punch me in the nose, I could spend a lot of time and energy saying that's rude and you shouldn't do that, right? But as they're walking down the aisle, and if they're going to punch me in the nose, if they're walking down the aisle, if I'm arguing with myself that they shouldn't do that, I'm actually not going to make good choices. If somebody's walking down the aisle and I can just accept, oh, they want to punch me in the nose, then the moment I accept it, I am now free to make the greatest choice for me. Now, might I have a feeling about somebody wanting to punch me in the nose? Yes, I might feel scared. I might feel angry. I might feel disappointed. I might have to do my forgiveness work. I might even have to do some grief work. But the moment I accept it, I am free to move my life forward. And when I accept it, I move all my relationships up. Third thing I want you to see about moving all relationships higher is that our enemies, or those that we're in conflict with, often call us into a higher level of a conversation than we want to have. Let me give you for instance, right? Say your neighbor runs over your rose bush. You have prize roses, and your neighbor, when they're backing out of their car, runs over your rose bush, and you get upset about that, right? But you don't say anything about it. You don't say, well, you don't have a conversation about it. You're not honest about it. You're not sharing your feelings about it. You just get upset about it. How much healing happened in that moment, right? Or let's just say they ran over your roses and you're so upset about it, you run over their cat, right? Now, what it looks like is that we are now degrading our relationships. We're not taking them up. We're now in this we're in this conflict, and nothing is getting better. Nothing is getting healed. And what I want you to see is oftentimes in times of conflict, in times when we're in relationships with people that we are not getting on with, we have to really be willing to have a higher conversation. And the way that I invite you to structure this is three little aspects. I see, I feel, I want. And it's an I see. It's an I statement. I see. I see that you ran over my roses. I had a feeling about that. I was so deeply sad. I had a feeling that my roses were run over. I worked so hard on those roses, and I really had a feeling about that. And what I wanted was my roses, but what I want really is to know that my stuff is respected, that I'm respected, that I'm safe. And what I want you to see is that these higher opportunities come not when we pull back, not when we just tell somebody to jump off a bridge, but when we have a more honest, a more vulnerable, a more meaningful conversation that actually allows us to turn our enemies into friends. And the fourth point that I want to make today, and this is one that I think that a lot of people are going to disagree with me about, right? The fourth point today is that life isn't always fair, but it's always infinite. Now, it isn't fair when a child is born sick, or when bad people become rich, or when people who smoke and drink and overeat live to be 100, or someone steals your car, or the company that you've invested 25 years of your life goes bankrupt, or your husband divorces you, or your house burns down, or you lose everything. That life isn't always fair. And we have such a belief that life should be fair that we really miss out on the opportunity that life is infinite. See, the human part of us wants everything to balance. The human part of us says that if I bring you a gift, that you have to bring me a gift. Or if I do a nice thing for you, you have to do a nice thing for me. Or if I love you, then you have to love me back. And the human part of us wants everything to balance. And the human part of us gets really upset when things don't look fair, when things don't look balanced, when things don't look right. And that human part of us really can get wound up that this isn't right, or this isn't right, or this isn't fair, or this isn't even, this isn't right. And what I want you to see is that Jesus didn't teach that, right? Jesus taught a higher level of good that was greater than simple human fairness. So sometimes life isn't fair. Sometimes it's not fair at all, but God is still infinite. Like if somebody runs into your car, right? It doesn't mean that you can't replace it, but they should replace it because they're the ones that ran into it. But God is your source. And when God is your source, when there's an infinite amount of love for you, when we live in an infinite universe that is always providing everything you want, we can actually get off our old belief that everything should be fair, and we can actually move into a higher level of good. That sometimes we're spending so much time and energy trying to create fairness in our relationships, trying to create fairness in our work, trying to create fairness with people out of our past, that we actually move our focus off of God and onto the petty disputes. Today, what I want you to see is that sometimes life isn't fair. I'm sorry about that. But sometimes it isn't. Sometimes life is not fair, but your connection with God is infinite. That whatever is taken from you, whatever you have lost, whatever looks unfair or feels unfair in your life, God is greater than that. And when we are no longer limited by our human interactions, when we are no longer limited by the behavior of others, when we can know that God is our source and that God is greater than whatever was taken from me, whatever happens to me, whatever somebody does to me, when we can move off of that and on to the greater goodness of God, we truly master life. Jesus said, in the world there's tribulation, but be of good cheer, for I've overcome the world. Today I want you to look at all the people that you have looked at as your enemies. And I even want you to make a list of all the things that you have believed that they owe you. And do you have a human right to go after all that stuff? You can take them to court, you can sue them, you can do all that stuff. But sometimes when we so focus on trying to keep everything fair, we don't actually look to God as our infinite source on what we truly desire most. Because there is nothing today that could keep you from the infinite goodness of God but you. No person, no situation can keep you outside of God's infinite spirit. Today, forgive. Truly forgive the people that have harmed you. Forgive the people that have taken advantage of you. Forgive the people that have robbed something or stole something. Forgive. And lift up your vision and see the infinite goodness of God is greater in every situation. God is my source, and I have everything that I need. Together, God is my source, and I have everything that I need. Breathe that in one more time. God is my source, and I have everything that I need. All right, let's take that into our time of meditation. I want you to close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. I want you to take a deep breath, and I want you to feel the presence of God that is within you and all around you. Today, we give thanks for every person that has taught us about the infinite. And sometimes the greatest ways that we have learned about the infinite is the times when we feel like that which we wanted most was taken away. That we had to look beyond the limited situations and see the infinite goodness of God. We had to lift up our eyes out of lack and limitation and see infinite possibilities. Today, take a deep breath and call forth the infinite Spirit of God within you. Call forth the abundance of God right here, right now. God, I forgive everyone. I forgive everyone for everything out of my past. I hold nothing back. I no longer want to be angry or upset. I no longer want to be small and angry. I no longer want to have to keep track of all the details. I lift up my eyes and I see the infinite possibilities. I see good and greater good. I see greater love and joy and peace and abundance than I've ever seen before. I'm not here for small things. I'm not here to keep track. I'm here to let go. So take a deep breath and forgive everyone out of your past. Forgive them for everything. And let it go. Let it completely go. And now lift up your vision even higher and see the infinite possibilities for God. Greater love and joy and peace than you've ever known before. Today, keep your eye focused on God. Lift up your vision. Forgive all of your enemies. Forgive all the details. Forgive all the upset. And see the infinite Spirit of God right here, right now. That life isn't fair, but it is infinite. That no matter what's been taken from you, no matter what you're grieving over, God is greater than that. And as you lift up your eyes, you will see the infinite goodness of God. And so it is. Amen. God bless you, friend. Thank you for being a part of our ministry. Thank you for your support. Thank you for all the ways that we can hold you in prayer as you move your life forward. God bless you, friend. I look forward to being with you next week.